When you think about the future of crypto, you probably picture higher prices, more adoption, and maybe even XRP or Bitcoin finally becoming the backbone of the financial system. But what if I told you there's a storm brewing in the background that could change everything? A storm so powerful that it could rip apart the very foundations of the blockchains we trust today. That storm is quantum computing. Most people hear the word quantum and either imagine sci-fi movies or think it's something way off in the future. But here's the truth. The world's top tech companies and governments are racing to unlock quantum power. And when that happens, every system that relies on today's cryptography, including Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, and nearly every other blockchain, could suddenly become vulnerable. The private keys that secure your wallet, the cryptographic signatures that validate every transaction, in a quantum world they might not be as unbreakable as we think. This is where our story begins. Because while the crypto community often focuses on price predictions and daily volatility, the deeper question is survival. Which blockchains are preparing for the quantum era? Which ones are ignoring the threat? And how soon could this matter? Over the next 5 parts, we're going to break this down in detail. First, we'll explore exactly why quantum computing is considered such a threat to blockchain security. Then we'll introduce the idea of crypto agility, a concept that could mean the difference between survival and extinction for some networks. After that, we'll shine a light on the projects already building quantum-resistant systems. Because yes, a few are actually ahead of the curve. But it's not all smooth sailing. In part 4, we'll dive into the technical challenges and trade-offs of making these upgrades, including the massive performance and governance hurdles no one likes to talk about. Finally, we'll close with the road ahead, looking at how governments, institutions, and blockchains might respond as quantum technology inches closer. Here's the kicker. Most of the crypto market is not paying attention to this yet. That means the first movers could have a massive advantage, not just in survival, but in investor confidence and adoption. Imagine a headline in 2030. Bitcoin cracked by quantum computers, but Project X survives. Who do you think capital will flow into? That's why this story matters today. So stick with me through this series. By the end, you'll not only understand the risks, but also the opportunities. You'll see why quantum isn't just a far-off science experiment, but a ticking clock for crypto as we know it. And along the way, we'll use real examples, plain language, and visuals to keep this both educational and engaging. Because here at LTL Productions, we don't just chase headlines, Ben, we go deeper. We uncover the forces shaping the future of finance. And the truth is, the ledger doesn't lie. The next big test for crypto won't just come from regulation or market cycles. It might come from quantum computers. So let's dive in. Part 1 begins with a simple but terrifying question. Why could quantum computing break today's blockchains? Part 1. Why quantum computing threatens blockchain. When you hear the phrase quantum computing, it might sound like hype, a buzzword Silicon Valley uses to raise money, or something locked away in labs decades from reality. But here's the truth. Quantum computing is real. It's advancing faster than most people realize, and it poses a very specific, very serious risk to blockchain technology. To understand why, we need to look at how blockchains are built, and what quantum computers do differently from the devices we use today. Blockchains like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP rely on cryptography to secure every part of the system. Your private keys are mathematically linked to public keys using cryptographic algorithms that are supposed to be impossible to reverse. That's why you can send XRP to a wallet address without worrying that someone can figure out your private key and steal your funds. It's also why miners or validators can secure transactions without fakes flooding the system. Cryptography is the bedrock of trust in decentralized systems. Here's where quantum computing comes in. Unlike classical computers, which use bits that are either 0 or 1, quantum computers use qubits, which can be both 0 and 1 at the same time thanks to quantum superposition. This gives them exponential processing power for certain types of problems. And unfortunately for crypto, one of those problems is breaking the exact math that secures blockchains today. 2 algorithms matter most in this story. The first is Shor's algorithm. On a powerful enough quantum computer, Shor's algorithm can factor extremely large numbers exponentially faster than classical machines. Why does that matter? Because most blockchains, including Bitcoin and Ethereum, use algorithms like RSA or elliptic curve cryptography for digital signatures. Shor's algorithm could make it trivial for a quantum computer to reverse engineer a private key from a public one. In other words, the lock on your wallet could be picked in seconds. The second is Grover's algorithm, which speeds up brute force searching. While not as devastating as Shor's algorithm, Grover's method could reduce the time needed to break hashing functions, like SHA-256, which powers Bitcoin mining and much of blockchain integrity. That means transaction verification and proof-of-work security could be undermined. Think about what this means in practice. If a quantum computer with enough stable qubits comes online, an attacker could take someone's public wallet address, calculate the private key, and drain the funds. Validators and miners could be impersonated. Transactions could be forged. The very idea of blockchain immutability, the trust that once something is recorded, it cannot be altered and would collapse. Now, some argue this is still far off. They point out that the largest quantum machines today are in the hundreds of qubits, while estimates suggest thousands, maybe millions, would be needed to actually crack Bitcoin or XRP in real time. But here's the problem. The pace of development is accelerating. What was once decades away now looks closer to 5 to 10 years. Companies like IBM, Google, and startups backed by billions in funding are scaling their quantum systems year after year. Governments, too, are racing for quantum supremacy because they know the first to master it gains not just scientific prestige, but access to breaking every secure communication system in the world. For crypto, the risk isn't just about the moment quantum breaks the math. It's about preparation. Imagine a future where you hold Bitcoin in a wallet, and one day the headlines say, "Quantum computer achieves breakthrough cryptography at risk." Even if no one has cracked a key yet, the market panic alone could tank confidence and prices overnight. Investors would flee blockchains that seem unprepared and flock to those already quantum resistant. This is why experts say the quantum threat is not about if, but when. And it's also why the conversation around crypto agility has become so important. The ability for a blockchain to upgrade its cryptographic foundations without collapsing the entire ecosystem. So let's recap part 1. Quantum computing isn't science fiction. It's real, it's coming, and it has the power to break the cryptography that blockchains depend on. Shor's algorithm threatens private keys. Grover's algorithm threatens hashing functions. Together, they create a looming risk that could undo the very security model that makes decentralized finance possible. This brings us to part 2. If the threat is real, what can be done about it? The answer lies in a concept that could decide which blockchains survive and which don't. Crypto agility. Part 2. Crypto agility, the lifeline for blockchains. If part 1 showed us the storm clouds forming, part 2 is where we start asking, is there a way to survive? The answer may come down to one concept, crypto agility. It sounds technical, but the idea is simple. Can a blockchain upgrade its own cryptography without tearing down the whole system? In a quantum future, that ability could be the difference between survival and collapse. Let's start with the problem. Most blockchains today are locked into their original designs. Bitcoin uses SHA-256 for hashing and CCP, 256K1 elliptic curve signatures. Ethereum, while evolving faster, still relies on cryptographic assumptions baked in from its earliest days. XRP and many others are no different. These algorithms were chosen because they were mathematically secure against classical computers. But once a quantum breakthrough happens, those assumptions may no longer hold. Here's where crypto agility comes in. Imagine you're driving a car and one day you discover the road ahead has collapsed. If your car is agile, you can take a quick detour and maybe a new road, maybe a bridge, and keep going. If your car is rigid, you're stuck. In blockchain terms, agility means the system is designed so that the cryptographic building blocks can be swapped out when needed. You don't have to reinvent the chain, you just replace the parts under threat. This matters because quantum-resistant cryptography already exists. Researchers have developed post-quantum algorithms like lattice-based, hash-based, and multivariate cryptography that aren't vulnerable to Shor's or Grover's attacks. The U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, has even started standardizing a set of post-quantum cryptographic algorithms. But having stronger locks is only useful if a blockchain can install them. That's the crypto agility piece. Think about the challenges. A blockchain is a global, decentralized network. Changing the cryptography isn't like updating an app on your phone. It requires consensus, coordination, and sometimes even hard forks. Every wallet, exchange, and validator has to agree and update. If a blockchain isn't designed with flexibility, Switching cryptographic systems could be messy, slow, and chaotic, in a race against a quantum clock that's dangerous. The projects that build agility into their DNA will have a major advantage. They'll be able to say, "We can upgrade to post-quantum security when needed without breaking our ecosystem." That kind of assurance could inspire confidence from both retail investors and institutional players who need long-term certainty. There's also an economic side to crypto agility. Imagine a world where Bitcoin suddenly looks fragile to quantum computers, but another blockchain quickly pivots to post-quantum algorithms. Capital would move fast. Traders, banks, and even governments might abandon chains that can't adapt and pour into those that can. In that scenario, agility isn't just technical, it's a survival strategy for market dominance. But it's not just about swapping algorithms once. True crypto agility means being prepared for multiple waves of change. What if a post-quantum algorithm chosen in 2028 later proves weaker than expected? Agile systems can pivot again. Non-agile systems could face existential threats every time a new breakthrough emerges. In a sense, agility is about building resilience into the very fabric of blockchain governance. Let's be clear, crypto agility is not easy. It requires foresight, technical planning, and above all, community buy-in. Developers need to create modular cryptographic systems. Governance models need to allow upgrades without endless infighting. And users need to trust that when the time comes, the upgrade will actually happen. That's why most blockchains aren't there yet. Many are still focused on scaling or DeFi adoption, while the quantum conversation sits on the back burner. So here's the takeaway for part 2. Quantum computing is a threat, but it doesn't have to be a death sentence. The blockchains that embrace crypto agility will be like ships built with reinforced hulls, ready to handle the next wave of storms. The ones that stay rigid risk capsizing when the tide turns. And this brings us to part 3 of our series, where we'll spotlight the leaders actually preparing for the quantum era. Which projects are already building post-quantum solutions? Which ones are ahead of the curve? And could they be the lifeboats when quantum finally arrives? Let's find out. Part 3, Post-Quantum Projects, Who's Building for Tomorrow? In Part 1, we uncovered the quantum threat. In Part 2, we introduced crypto agility as the lifeline blockchains need to survive. Now comes the million-dollar question. Who is actually preparing for this future? The reality is that while most of the crypto market is obsessed with price action, a handful of projects are quietly working on post-quantum security, and they could end up being the big winners when the quantum clock finally strikes. Let's start with the research side. The U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, has been running a global competition to select and standardize post-quantum cryptographic algorithms. In 2022, they announced 4 finalists, including Crystal's Kyber for encryption and Crystal's dilithium for digital signatures. These algorithms are based on lattice cryptography, which is believed to resist quantum attacks like Shor's algorithm. While not a blockchain project in itself, this process sets the stage for which cryptographic tools blockchains will likely adopt in the coming years. On the blockchain front, a few names stand out. Quantum Resistant Ledger, QRL, is one of the most direct answers to the threat. Built from the ground up with post-quantum security, QRL uses XMSS, a hash-based signature scheme to protect against quantum attacks. Instead of waiting for the day when elliptic curve cryptography becomes obsolete, QRL baked in quantum resistance from day one. It's not the biggest chain in terms of adoption, but it represents a proof of concept, a live blockchain that's already quantum ready. Another example is Algorand, which has been working on upgrading its signature scheme toward quantum safety. Algorand's founder, Silvio Micali, is a Turing Award-winning cryptographer, and the project has long emphasized cutting-edge math in its design. While Algorand doesn't yet run fully post-quantum cryptography, it's positioning itself to integrate those tools as standards emerge. That's crypto agility in action. Ethereum, while not post-quantum yet, has a massive developer ecosystem exploring ways to future-proof. Vitalik Buterin has publicly acknowledged the need for quantum resistance, and research circles around Ethereum are investigating how to migrate to post-quantum signature schemes when the time comes. The challenge for Ethereum will be execution, balancing upgrades while maintaining its huge DeFi and NFT ecosystem. XRP Ledger has also seen discussions about post-quantum upgrades. Ripple engineers have debated the long-term roadmap, noting that elliptic curve cryptography is a known vulnerability in a quantum world. While no official overhaul has been announced, XRP's close ties to financial institutions mean it may face institutional pressure to adopt post-quantum standards earlier than other networks. If global banks demand quantum-safe rails, XRP may have to lead. There are also emerging research projects like PQChain and Boson Q, designed specifically to explore hybrid systems that combine classical cryptography with post-quantum algorithms. These chains are small today, but they demonstrate that the conversation is happening, even if it hasn't reached the mainstream. And it's not just individual blockchains. The broader crypto infrastructure is beginning to prepare. Wallet developers are experimenting with quantum-safe key storage. Some custodians are exploring multi-layer defenses that mix current cryptography with experimental post-quantum methods. Even exchanges are starting to ask how they will prove solvency or secure user assets in a quantum era. Here's the key point. Being first doesn't just mean survival. It could mean dominance. Imagine the day quantum risk hits headlines. The blockchains that can confidently say we are already secure will stand apart. They'll attract not only investors but also institutions, governments, and enterprises that need guarantees of long-term safety. Just as we saw with the rollout of ISO 20022 and compliance standards, the winners aren't always the flashiest projects. They're the ones that build infrastructure ready for the future. So while the market chases meme coins and ETF hype, the smart money is watching which projects are laying quantum-resistant foundations. Those projects could be the lifeboats when the storm hits. And that sets us up for part 4. Because building a quantum-resistant blockchain isn't just about good intentions, it's brutally difficult. In the next section, we'll dive into the implementation challenges and trade-offs that come with making these upgrades. Can blockchains pivot without breaking? And what do they risk losing in the process? That's where the battle for the future of crypto really begins. Part 4. Implementation, challenges, and trade-offs. If building a blockchain that survives quantum sounds like a no-brainer, here's the reality check. Upgrading cryptography in a live, global network is one of the hardest challenges in all of tech. It's not just a matter of swapping one algorithm for another. It's a delicate balancing act between security, speed, scalability, and governance, and the trade-offs are brutal. Let's start with the technical side. Post-quantum cryptographic algorithms like Crystal's Kyber or dilithium aren't drop-in replacements. They come with larger key sizes and heavier computation requirements. That means slower transaction speeds, more storage needed per block, and higher costs for users. Bitcoin's SHA-256 hashing is efficient, partly because it was designed for performance on classical computers. Replace it with something bulkier, and suddenly transaction throughput drops while node requirements skyrocket. Then there's the issue of backward compatibility. Imagine if tomorrow Bitcoin Core developers announced a mandatory switch to a new post-quantum signature scheme. Every wallet, every exchange, every custody service would need to update. Old keys might become obsolete, forcing users to migrate funds. What happens if millions of holders don't move in time? Do their coins get stranded forever? Or worse, do they become vulnerable to quantum theft while everyone else moves forward? This is the nightmare scenario developers wrestle with. Even for blockchains that pride themselves on flexibility, like Ethereum, upgrades on this scale are dangerous. One small bug in a post-quantum signature scheme could open up new attack vectors, potentially worse than the quantum threat itself. Remember the DAO hack in 2016? A single vulnerability nearly derailed Ethereum entirely. Now imagine rolling out an untested cryptographic foundation across an ecosystem worth hundreds of billions. The stakes couldn't be higher. Beyond the tech, there are governance challenges. Blockchains operate on consensus. That means you need broad community agreement before deploying a change this fundamental. But what if the community splits? Some might argue to stay on proven elliptic curve cryptography until quantum is truly here. Others might insist on adopting lattice-based cryptography immediately, no matter the costs. A split could lead to forks, one chain quantum-resistant, the other exposed. That would fragment liquidity, confuse investors, and potentially weaken both versions. The economic trade-offs are just as daunting. Larger keys and slower algorithms could make transaction fees more expensive. Validators or miners might need more powerful hardware to keep up, raising the barrier to entry and centralizing the network further. For retail users, the experience could get worse just when mainstream adoption is finally picking up. There's a real risk that in trying to prepare for a quantum future, some blockchains could sacrifice usability and lose ground to competitors. And then there's the question of timing. Implementing post-quantum algorithms too early could backfire if better solutions emerge later. Imagine spending years migrating an entire blockchain to one algorithm, only for cryptographers to discover flaws in it 5 years later. On the other hand, waiting too long risks being caught unprepared when the first practical quantum breakthrough hits. It's a high-stakes guessing game. Switch too early, you waste resources and trust. Switch too late and you might not survive. Some projects are experimenting with hybrid approaches. These systems use both classical and post-quantum algorithms together, layering them so that even if one fails, the other provides protection. It's a smart compromise, but it doubles the computational load and complicates development. Others suggest crypto agility by design, modular frameworks that can adopt new algorithms as standards evolve. But these are still experimental and unproven at scale. So here's the truth. The path to quantum resistance is not smooth. It's full of trade-offs, conflicts, and risks. No blockchain can simply flip a switch. It will take years of research, careful testing, and global coordination. And when the time comes, not every project will manage it. Some may stumble in implementation. Others may split apart in governance battles. A few may succeed, and those few could end up owning the future. That's why Part 5 matters. Because while the technical challenges are steep, the bigger question is what happens on the global stage. Governments, institutions, and regulators are already thinking about quantum's impact. In our final section, we'll explore how policy, adoption, and timing could shape the race, and what it means for the survival of crypto as we know it. Part 5. The road ahead, regulation, adoption, and timing. We've covered the threat, the lifeline of crypto agility, the pioneers building quantum-resistant systems, and the brutal challenges of implementation. Now it's time to zoom out and ask the bigger question: what happens next? Because while blockchains are racing to prepare themselves, the quantum conversation isn't just technical, it's political, economic, and global. And that means regulation and adoption will play just as big a role as engineering. Let's start with the regulators. Governments understand the stakes of quantum computing better than almost anyone. National security, banking, healthcare, defense. Every sector depends on cryptography. If quantum computers can crack today's algorithms, it's not just crypto wallets at risk. It's military communications, medical records, and global payments. That's why agencies like the US NIST are leading the charge to standardize post-quantum algorithms. Their goal is simple: create a global foundation of quantum-safe cryptography that industries can adopt, blockchains included. But government involvement is a double-edged sword. On one hand, clear standards could give crypto projects a blueprint to follow. On the other, regulation might demand rapid compliance, forcing chains to upgrade faster than their communities are ready for. Imagine if the European Union passed a law in 2029, mandating that all financial systems, including blockchains, must use post-quantum cryptography by 2030. Chains that fail to comply could lose legal recognition, cutting them off from institutional adoption overnight. Institutions themselves are another force to watch. Banks, payment providers, and investment firms are watching quantum development closely. They don't want to put billions into infrastructure that could become insecure in 5 years. That means when institutions begin adopting blockchain rails, they'll favor those that are either already quantum resistant or provably agile enough to upgrade. Just as ISO 20022 compliance became a stamp of credibility for payment systems, post-quantum readiness could become the next badge of trust. Timing is where things get tricky. No one knows exactly when quantum computers will cross the threshold from theoretical threat to practical danger. Some experts say it could take decades. Others warn it could be less than 10 years. The uncertainty creates paralysis. Should blockchains start expensive migrations now, or wait until breakthroughs are undeniable? The truth is, waiting carries as much risk as moving too early. Investors don't like uncertainty, and the moment headlines scream quantum computer breaks encryption, the market will punish any project that hasn't prepared. Another angle is geopolitics. Quantum computing is shaping up to be a new arms race between the US, China, and Europe. Whoever gets there first gains the ability to read encrypted communications, crack financial systems, and tilt the global balance of power. In that context, crypto is both a risk and an opportunity. A quantum-safe blockchain could become a tool of statecraft. Imagine a government backing a chain specifically because it's immune to quantum attacks. That could shift adoption dramatically, making technical preparedness a matter of international strategy. So where does this leave us? The road ahead is a blend of urgency and uncertainty. Blockchains that fail to prepare may fade away, undone by panic or obsolescence. Blockchains that succeed could become the backbone of a quantum-ready financial system, attracting institutions, governments, and trillions in capital. Here's the bottom line. Crypto has faced many challenges: regulation, lawsuits, bear markets, and adoption hurdles. But the quantum threat is unique. It's not about human behavior, hype cycles, or politics. It's about math. And math doesn't negotiate. Either your cryptography can stand against quantum or it can't. This is why the conversation we're having matters. Investors, developers, and institutions need to stop treating quantum as science fiction and start treating it as a countdown clock. Because when the moment comes, there won't be time to react. The winners will be those who prepared years in advance. And that's where we close this 5-part deep dive. But our series isn't over yet. Stick around for the outro, where we'll pull everything together, reflect on what it means for the future of crypto, and explain why being quantum ready isn't just about security, it's about survival. Outro: Quantum Ready Crypto. The ledger doesn't lie. We've reached the end of this journey. 5 parts, thousands of words, and one looming reality. Quantum computing is coming, and it will test every blockchain, every wallet, every protocol we rely on today. Whether it happens in 5 years or 15, the clock is ticking, and the ledger doesn't lie. Those who prepare will survive. Those who don't will vanish. In part 1, we looked at the threat itself. Shor's and Grover's algorithms aren't just theoretical math problems. They are the blueprints for breaking the cryptography that secures our digital world. The very trust model of blockchain, the idea that your private key is uncrackable and your transaction immutable, could collapse once quantum crosses the line. In part 2, we discovered the Lifeline, crypto agility. A blockchain that can adapt, swap out algorithms, and pivot to new defenses isn't just building resilience, it's building trust. Agility isn't a luxury, it's survival. Part 3 showed us that some projects are already building for tomorrow. From QRL's hash-based signatures to Algorand's flexible architecture, from Ethereum's research community to XRP's institutional connections, a handful of blockchains are peeking over the horizon and preparing for the storm. They may not be in the spotlight yet, but when the market finally wakes up, those names could rise fast. Then came part 4, where we faced the hard truth: implementation is brutal. Larger keys slow systems. Compatibility issues threaten to strand user funds. Governance battles risk splitting communities. And economic trade-offs could make blockchains less usable just when they need mass adoption most. Building quantum resistance isn't about one upgrade. It's about years of coordinated effort, testing, and trust. Finally, in part 5, we zoomed out to the global stage. Governments standardizing post-quantum cryptography. Institutions waiting for chains they can trust. Geopolitical powers racing for supremacy. The decisions blockchains make now won't just affect their investors. They could shape the future of finance itself. So what's the takeaway? It's simple but sobering. Crypto is not guaranteed survival. Just as the internet we know today looks nothing like it did in the 1990s, the blockchain landscape of the 2030s will be shaped by who survives the quantum test. Some chains may collapse, others may fork and fragment, but a few will adapt, thrive, and become the true infrastructure of a quantum-ready economy. And here's the part most investors miss. You don't want to be scrambling when the headline breaks. You don't want to be holding assets in a chain that suddenly looks vulnerable. The time to understand quantum isn't the day it arrives. It's now. Because when quantum power scales, markets won't wait for you to figure it out. This is why we created this series. Not to spread fear, but to open eyes. To show that beneath the daily price swings and market noise, there's a deeper story, one of survival, preparation, and foresight. Because the biggest winners in the next decade won't just be the coins that pump on hype. They'll be the ones that built for a world where quantum computers exist. So remember this. The storm is coming. The ledger is watching. And the ledger doesn't lie. This has been LTL Productions. Please like, subscribe, and share this series if it opened your eyes to the future of crypto. It helps more than you know. And as always, this is not financial advice. It's knowledge, perspective, and a call to stay ahead of the curve. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive. The quantum era is closer than you think. And the story of crypto survival is still being written. The only question left is, which blockchains will make it to the other side?